What is going on, guys? Welcome back to TGM Guitars. So today I thought I'd do a roundup of all my guitars and gear that I use, seeing as it's December. I'm going to kind of try to do one each year at the end of the year. That's if I keep these channels going. I've got a bad rap in the past about kind of letting channels fall to the wayside. But anyway, let's start. Okay, so first up we will start with this. So this is a Starfire by EKS Technologies, also known as my very first guitar. So I've had this in a few videos already, and it's been quite upgraded. You'll see my modified guitars video where I talk about what I've done to it and pictures of sort of what different stages it's been in. So at the moment it's HSH configuration. I think these are Vanson pickups, so kind of their PAF style pickups. Kind of wound that one up a bit more to make it a bit more hot and sound a bit more gainy, because it's trying to go for that super strat kind of deal. But apart from that, I've replaced the electronics and everything else is original. And there's a massive crack. I don't know if the camera will actually pick it up. Let's try and get that running all the way through the body. So I'm not sure how much longer this guitar will last, but it is one that I will keep in my arsenal. And yeah, if it does split in half one day because I decide to take the pick guard off, then I'll probably end up gluing it back together, if I'm perfectly honest, because it's got a bit of sentimental value, this one. So moving on to what is probably the cheapest guitar in my arsenal. So this is just a cheap Telecaster copy that I got from Cash Converters many years ago by a brand called Rockets. No idea who they are, but it does that telly thing. I've upgraded the pickups to Wilkinson, I think they're like 60s style pickups, but apart from that it's just a good guitar when I need to get that telly sound. And it's through this guitar that I've realised that telly thing isn't really my thing. It's a good tool to have, but at the end of the day I don't think I'm going to go and splash out a load of money on a Telecaster, because I'm definitely more of a Strat guy. But yeah, so that's my Telecaster. So this is my one and only acoustic that I've had for a fair few years. It's a vintage VE440 VB. It's just a good acoustic to use. So it's got the Fishman pickup, the one that mounts in now, I can't remember what it's called, but it mounts in the sound hole so you can't see it. It's got the battery door down there and it does its job. I'm not a big acoustic player, so it seems a bit silly to me to have loads of really expensive acoustics. I kind of waste all my money on electrics instead, so this is just what I pick up when I need that acoustic sound. It's probably not the most amazing. I wish I did have something with a better neck on it. It's just got sort of a soft V-neck that doesn't fit me too well. But I do like the slotted headstock satin finish. Yeah, it's a nice guitar. So let's just get the bases out of the way before I move on to the main guitars that I use. So this is actually, it's actually my brother's guitar. It's in a pretty sorry state, quite dirty as well. That is actually quite bad. I mean, the state of this thing, it was never really loved, and I kind of repossessed it because I needed a bass to play about with things. It's by a company called Rix. So the story behind this one is he got this the same time I got my black Starfire guitar, and it's got nothing upgraded in it. It needs a new neck. The neck is actually really badly twisted. I don't know if probably won't pick that up on the camera, but it's such a terribly twisted neck that I can't do anything with it. The action is miles too high, and in order to make some strings playable, they're not actually playable because the open notes buzz, and yeah, it's quite bad. But maybe one day I'll get around to putting a new neck on this and upgrading it, make it a bit more usable, because then I've got a P-bass in my arsenal, so that'd be quite good. But yeah, that's the P-bass. Now this thing is a heavy lump. So I acquired this early on this year, kind of when the first sort of lockdown stuff happened, because I thought, you know what, I'm going to buy myself a bass and try and teach myself how to play it. So this is a Harley Benton jazz bass. I can't remember the actual model number of it, but it's the kind of vintage looking version. It's an actual ash body which weighs an absolute ton, but looks pretty good. It's got the Roswell pickups, which I think are just the Harley Benton in-house brand. And yeah, I pretty much use this for everything bass related. It's a good sounding solid bass guitar, plays quite nicely, so it's, yeah, it's all I can ask for in a bass. Again, with the acoustic, I don't spend loads of time playing bass guitar, so I'm not going to spend like hundreds of pounds on a bass guitar if I can get a cheap one that does the job that I need it to. So yeah, that's my jazz bass. So moving up into what are the main 4 guitars I use. So this is a 2013 made in Mexico Fender Stratocaster. Got it in the red maple fretboard purely because I'm a big fan of Mark Knopfler, so it was kind of that vibe. Pickups in it are Tone Rider City Limits, almost said Tone City then. Tone Rider City Limit pickups, basically a nice budget, affordable version of Texas Specials. Because I like that Stevie Ray Vaughan sound, and trying to get that on this guitar, it's a little bit easier with those pickups. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. It's been a solid guitar. I've gigged it loads of times, and it's probably one of my most reliable guitars, to be honest. I've had trouble with at least one of the others, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, that's my Strat. So when I bought this thing, this was a bit of a left field purchase for me. You can see my style is very much rock, or that classic. I mean, I said about being a Knopfler fan, massive Hendrix and Clapton fan, going for the bluesy stuff. So I bought this, a big old jazz box. Now, I wanted a semi-hollow or hollow guitar for a while because it was something different. It's something I hadn't tried before, a different kind of thing to play about with, and I was umming and ahhing on one of these in the walnut colour that they had it in when they first brought out the Streamliner series. I should probably say this is a Gretsch, just check, G2420T, because it's got the Bigsby Streamliner. So when they first came out with the Streamliners, they had a few colours, and I was very close to buying the walnut colour one. But I decided to hold off. I was like, well, it's not really my thing, am I going to play it that much? And as a result, I waited, and then the next year they come out with this colour, which, forgive me, I can't remember the name of it, but it is an amazing blue colour, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, now they've brought it out in a few other colours that are equally as stunning, including like a blue-grey colour, which I'd love to have, but I only need one of these guitars, unfortunately. But yeah, absolutely love this guitar. It's got the Gretsch Broadtrons, I think they're called, in it, and they're kind of more humbucky PAF style than actual Gretsch pickups, but it works good for what I need it for. And yeah, some of the things I've written on this guitar are, yeah, quite rocky, believe it or not. When you turn this up, it's got a nice growl to it. Yes, you have to be careful with the feedback because it's fully hollow, but yeah, I do quite like this guitar. So here is my most recent purchase, guitar-wise, acquired in, must have been September this year. The only guitar I've ever pre-ordered, and what a wait that was. It was agony. I ordered it in, must have been early August, and then I had to wait a month and a bit. So if you're unfamiliar with what this is a Brian May special in white, which I know a lot of people go straight for the red, but I quite liked the white. It's between this and the baby blue one that they had, but I'm still getting used to this guitar. It's got quite a wide neck. Not, well, it is quite a fat neck, but at the same time it's wide. It's almost like playing a Spanish acoustic with the width of the neck, but it just makes you play a bit different, and it's a shorter scale as well, so it's very, very interesting. First guitar I've had a properly functional tremolo system that doesn't go out of tune every 5 seconds. mainly thanks to the Zero Fret up here and the Grover locking tuners. But yeah, absolutely love this guitar. It's definitely a lot more than just a Queen guitar, so look forward to writing stuff with this and getting out gigging again so I can use this one live. But yeah, that's my red special. And last but not least, in the guitar department, this is probably my main guitar. This is a 2016 Gibson Les Paul Tribute 50s. Should have thrown studio in there as well, because it's pretty much a studio with a nicer finish. I've done a whole video on this guitar because I did plan to do a separate video for each guitar at some point, but yeah, that's a little bit trickier when you're trying to write stuff with just one instrument. But this is a workhorse. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of my guitars had a few reliability issues, and that would be this one. The ground pin in it, it's a PCB configuration in the back, and the ground wire, can you really call it a wire? It's kind of like a big thick single core strand of completely messed that up, but anyway, it's a big thick wire that just popped out of its grounding. It's got like a little quick connect on it, and it popped out of there, and this thing started making really weird noises during rehearsals. So I had to take it apart mid-rehearsal, diagnose it, find that. The pots started playing up. Now that was just a simple case of cleaning out, but for them to get dirt and start messing about after, it probably started doing it, so this 2016 model started doing it around 2018, so the guitar was only about 2 years old when some of the pots started playing up. And live I do ride the pots. Maybe that's why they went wrong and started to kind of silt up with dirt, but that's all fixed now. One thing I've noticed in my house here, it gets quite cold in this room, so the finish has started to naturally check, which is quite interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops. It's mainly around sort of all the drilled holes and where things are installed, but yeah, it's not very obvious because of this satin gold finish, but yeah, it will just add to the things like that bit of buckle rash that started on the back. I don't worry too much about keeping this guitar in 100% condition. I like the look of a worn and played guitar, hence why I tried to relic my first guitar, but yeah, that's my Les Paul. Right, so this is my current pedal board. Forgive me, I've noticed the light is reflecting a little bit off of the Boss pedal straight into the camera, so that looks really shiny for some reason. But anyway, this is my current pedal board. Also noticed I'm hearing shadow foam, hello. I need to stop going off topic and being weird. Anyway, so this is my current guys of the pedal board. I've used different pedals when I was using different amps live, but this is what I'm planning to use live with my new band when we eventually gig. So if I just walk through the signal chain, first up we have got the Vox. That's the V845 wah. I've had that for a fair few years now. Think it needs a clean because it's not sounding the best, so I might have to get that open at some point and just clean all clean the pot out. Try and get that sounding it's glorious for myself. And then from that it goes into this Donner Boost Killer over here. God, trying to do this behind the camera is weird. But anyway, into the Donner Boost Killer. So that's just a boost pedal. I sometimes kick that on when using the Red Special or the Strat, something with low or lower output pickups that needs that be brought up in volume to kind of reach the same amount of gain that I'm getting with the Les Paul. And then from that, I believe it goes into, trying to trace this here, that goes into the Electro Harmonix silencer. I was playing about with different setups to that, so forgive me for getting a bit confused to where I was. So it goes into the silencer noise gate. I realise I'm pointing and it's nowhere near it. I'm going to stop doing that. Into the Electro Harmonix silencer noise gate. That is pretty much vital when using the Gretsch in conjunction with high gain. So that is why that is on there. Just got that set up for a bit of cut off. I do tend to turn it off when I'm actually playing because it can choke notes out, which I really don't like. I've tried different settings, but it's either loads of feedback and loads of sustain on your notes, or every note is cut. So yeah, it does its job. It did the job it was intended for. So from there we go into the start of my Harley Benton FXL8 Pro looper. So this is a looper with 8 different loops that you can either have as 2 separate loops of 4, or you can have it sort of jumped as a full 8 strip. At the moment I've got it in the 2 separate loops of 4. So we go into that. Now it's got a tuner out, so when you mute it, it goes to tuner, which I've got down there, a Korg Pitch Black Mini. Realised I didn't power this on. I probably should have, so you could have seen the all of the pedals a bit easier. Well, the ones with displays on them, but that is a Korg Pitch Black Mini. Brilliant tuner, does its job, easy to see. Got no complaints about that. And then loop 1 is my Little Big Muff, so I needed something with a nice raw thick fuzz sound, so it does the job perfectly. Loop 2 is my Tube Screamer, which is my default go-to when I go to my solo boost. It just tightens everything up and pushes those mids to cut through the mix nicely. So that's pretty much my go-to solo sound. As you'll see on my looper down here, I've put stickers on it, so I can see I've got main 1, main 2, outro and solo. Maybe I need to change the outro one. That was for one song that I wrote with my old band that needed a phaser on the outro, so it had pretty much its own well, C was pretty much for that. Just for that one song. I don't use it in any other patches, so Banks had its own patch, there we go. But anyway, let's not get too hung up on that. Loop number 3 is the Dark Matter Distortion by TC Electronic. It's taken me a while to get used to this. Only really started using it recently. The new band I'm in do some pop punk stuff. Well, I say pop punk, it's more sort of pop rocky stuff that calls for a clean sound that then goes to a distorted sound. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to do that via the distortion pedal rather than channel switching on the amp. So yeah, it's doing a good job so far. Found the level appears to be a bit low, and it needs a bit more. Doesn't seem like it's got much oomph on the output, but that's something I'm kind of playing about with and trying to get it to sound the best I can. Then loop number 4 goes into the B side of my Boss MD500 down here. So I was shopping quite a while ago for modulation effects. I wanted a better chorus because I was using the Danelectro Fab chorus. I had a cheap Behringer phase and I wanted to upgrade those, and then I thought, but I want to play about with other sounds, so in comes the MD500. Absolutely perfect for that, perfect for experimentation. However, I do get lost in the menus and you have something that sounds really good and then you don't. It's takes a lot of playing about with, but does a good job. All the chorus sounds are brilliant. So I've got one half of that, because you can set it up to have 2 separate loops, in loop number 4. So then out of there, loop 1, which is this side here, so all those ones I've talked about, goes out to a control box on the back. Let's see if I can show that. So here, built that myself, it's not too difficult to make one of those. So out of that, that goes to the amp, and then we have the effects loop comes into these 2 here, and then the effects loop of my amp, sorry, this goes to this because this has a built-in loop to quieten down the pedals, then it goes out to the amp. Apologies. It does get a bit confusing sometimes, but anyway, we then come from the effects loop that goes into loop number 2. So loop number 2, loop 1 of loop 2 is into the second half of this MD500, and yeah, allows me to have a choice of whether I want my modulation effects before the amp or after, because we all know they sound different. Some occasions you want them in the front, sometimes you want them in the loop. So that's why I've got it set up like that. Then loop 2 and 3 on there are not doing anything. They're ready for when I get myself a decent delay and a decent reverb. I want to chuck those in there rather than relying on the amps reverb live. And then loop number 4 is the Harley Benton AC tone. So what I use that for, if you watch my video on it, it's in the effects loop because I'll use the clean channel of my Marshall DSL 100 and then use that for a bit of flavour and also to boost it a little bit. Changes the sound, changes the texture. It's almost like having another amp. And then from there, this goes out to the return, and that is the whole loop. Hope that wasn't too confusing for you, and hopefully it wasn't too long. This is going to be a long video, isn't it? Oh, also this is a MIDI looper, a MIDI switcher, sorry. So the MIDI, I've got a port on the back that you would have seen when I turned it up, so I can control all of the Marshall's MIDI functions. So probably time to move up to the amps. Okay, so these are currently the 2 amps I have with me in my room. So I do have another amp. It's a Bugera V55 HD, but it's coming on loan to my younger brother, needs an amp to start. He's just started playing guitar and needed to borrow an amp, so that's where that one is. But we will start with this one. So this is the Bugera 1960 Infinium. Now, I wanted something Marshall-y, something that could get that classic rock sound, and bought this because I couldn't afford a Marshall at the time. And you know what, it does the job pretty well. So if you're unfamiliar what this is, it's basically a Plexi, a copy of a Plexi circuit. It's a copy of the 1959 SLP. Not an amp that was made in 1959. If you know your Marshall numbers, basically that's just the 100 watt Super Loop Plexi. So this is 100 watts, and this has got the Randy Rhoads cascaded gain mod from factory, which is quite nice. So these bottom 2 inputs are the cascaded gain. Also, no need for a jumper on this because input 1 is basically jumper channels, and it works if you have that all the way down. It's almost like having it in a conventional. It's almost like having it conventional, so you can have your high and your low input. But 2 of this input is just the high channel, so you can get that classic sort of Marshall without the bass side of the amp in. So good amp, nice and loud. I used to run this with the Bugera 4x12, which didn't sound too good if I'm perfectly honest, but it did its job. Yeah, good solid amp. I do have to say, when I first got one of these, so this is actually the second one of these I've owned, but that's only because the first one blew a bunch of fuses inside the amp, so it got sent back to GAC, where I bought it from, and I heard nothing back for almost a month. And I turned around to them and said, well, what's going on with my amp? And they were like, oh, we don't know, we haven't heard anything. So me being me, kicked off a little bit and got a brand new one sent out to me. Quite simply because it was taking the mick a little bit to have an amp for that long and not have it fixed. I'm guessing they'd sent it back to Bugera because it was within warranty. So maybe it is on Bugera's end. But when I got this one, the exact same thing happened. And I needed it for a gig, so I replaced the fuses. So basically I just used cheap Chinese fuses because these are made in China. So they blew quite easily and I replaced them myself. I do have to say, if you have no idea with electronics, do not mess about with amps at all. Do not, you've got the death caps in here, you've got so much stuff that could kill you. Now I'm in electronic engineering training, so I felt quite comfortable with letting this sit for, must have been weeks. I let this sit for before I was like, right, those capacitors won't be holding charge anymore, it should be safe. And yeah, that's when I did the change, and it's not ever let me down since. So yeah, that's the story of my Bugera. I realised this video is going to be really long, so I keep going out on tangents. But anyway, down here, this is my Marshall DSL 100 HR, so it's the newer version of the DSL 100. A lot of people don't go for 100 watts anymore because this thing is loud. I even had a gig. I'll try and find some footage from that gig and pop it up where I use this with the 1960A vintage cab, and yeah, this gig they made me turn it around, so I'll try and roll that clip here. So I was playing with an amp that was round the wrong way, but anyway, great amp, does all what I want it to. Apologies if you can hear the cats in the background having a bundle, but it does everything I need it to. It's obviously got its 4 channels. It's almost like a twin channel with 2 boosts almost, because you've got the clean and then the normal crunch, and then you've got the 2 ultra gains. I never use ultra gain 2, it's always ultra gain 1. But yeah, MIDI switchable works nicely with my pedal board setup, and I don't know what else to say about it. It's the amp that you're going to pretty much hear all over this channel. Occasionally this one, but mainly this one. And then potentially I've got my eyes on another amp, but that will be something in the future. So, as I said, 1960A vintage on the bottom here that I use. And that's one thing. I'll plug this in so you can actually see it. The other sort of vital bit of gear that I use for my videos. I will do a full video on, it's actually planned, I'm planning to do a full video on how I record the intro jams and everything. So down here I've got the 2 Notes Torpedo Captor X. Great bit of kit, allows me to actually use these at home through studio monitors, which is brilliant. But I won't go too much into that. This is mainly a sort of guitar, pedal and amp video, what I'm using at the moment, my current sort of 2020 use. Not that it's been used much, especially with second lockdown coming in. I haven't actually rehearsed with my new band. Thank you to anyone who's made it this far. Hope you enjoyed yours, sort of seeing the gear that I've got at the moment. As I said, I plan to upgrade that or update it every year, so I could just imagine the videos are probably going to get longer and longer year on year. But I will probably do sort of mini review videos and my thoughts on the gear as I buy it, so it's a good chance to see it all then. But anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed this video. Comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.